For 40 for fo- for 40 years, I've walked the line between worlds and am well versed in death. But I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Mo, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening, New Orleans, as well as the rest of the world. Today is November, 7th, and we are in the full Beaver Moon energy. My name is Trish. I'm the host. This is The Missing Piece, 105.3 FM New Orleans and the United Public Radio Network, as we are also broadcasting live on Parapost Network. And I completely butchered that entire intro, but y'all are used to that. So, we've been having such glitches already, and it's just starting. But so, first of all, I do want to thank Carnation for sponsoring my hour. I'm so grateful for them, as well as the rest of the network. This is the time of year that I start using Carnation a lot, obviously, in baking and hot chocolate and such. So thank you, Carnation. And tonight I wanted to do something different because it's the time of year that people really kind of start. Well, for me, it's both. This is, since my birthday's in June and I'm a Gemini, this is like my dark half of the year. And all of my struggles and all of my everything comes up at this time of year. Well, not to mention it's winter time, so especially for witches, of course, we just passed. It's basically our New Year's, and this is the dark half of the year. And the weather, we here in Kansas, it rained for like 3 days straight over the weekend, and it's just it kind of everybody kind of gets down, everybody starts kind of facing their shadow sides and stuff. So I wanted to step away from. I try to balance my involvement with the world of the paranormal and real life. Well, paranormal is real life, but my realities, issues and obstacles. So in honor of that, I found this creator. I don't know how I found you, actually. I think it was just a random. I'm always led to people in such odd ways. But my guest tonight is an addiction recovery and mental health content creator, Quinn Stone. And so welcome, Quinn. I'm so happy that you you agreed to be on my show.
Thank you so
Um,
much, Trish. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me here, and thanks for everybody listening.
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, people, and as far when people think of, I just encountered this today. When people think of addictions or mental health, there's such a stigma with it. Actually, even to this day. I mean it. Um, and I was talking to somebody, and they said, "Well, I've never done drugs, and I've never been an alcoholic." And I'm like, "But you just told me how you can't get anything done because you watched the last 15 episodes of, whatever."
Hmm.
and and so there's tons of I like people to remember that there are so many. Don't judge people, y'all. Like, there's so many different things. It can be an addiction. You can be addicted to Starbucks. You could be addicted to um I don't know, anything, like um
Chocolate.
yeah,
Yeah,
chocolate, too
yeah,
much TV, too
absolutely. I
much
mean, addiction is
shopping.
simply, yeah, addiction simply relates to like how much dopamine your body is receiving. I like to think that like the addiction isn't really about the substance. It's about the
Right.
dopamine, because our brain starts to get used to this constant flow of dopamine, and that's what we're chasing is this feel good feeling, right? The dopamine that's being released is what we're chasing. We want to feel that warmth, as they say, that comfort,
Hmm.
and that's why a lot of addicts are chasing are often people who experience some traumatic events, child abuse, domestic violence, things like that, because they that's why they turn to substance abuse, is because substance abuse gives you that dopamine flood that we didn't have as a child by
Hmm.
having a relationship with our parents, or you know not experiencing sexual abuse, or things like that. So I often say that addiction, in my opinion, for me at least, was more so about the I was addicted more so to the obsession that the obsession of escape that substance granted me. So because because I experienced those things at a young age, I felt very unworthy. I
Hmm.
hated myself. I had severe depression, anxiety, everything else. And when I discovered using a substance to escape who I was and mask who I was, using some substances, I could be funnier, or to me, I thought I was funnier. If I drank and got belligerently drunk, I would be funnier. If I, did coke, then I would talk a whole lot, and so that would, I'd be more interesting. Or, I was selling drugs to people, and so, that would bring that camaraderie that I was searching for, you know, that home. And really, all that is dopamine. Um,
It's like an
so
escapism.
exactly. But I can actually really relate the spirituality to addiction as well, in the sense that the law of attraction, for me, when I discovered that escape, I was often depressed and very angry, very felt very guilty about what had happened to me, felt unworthy, and so I was living on this low vibrational frequency emotion. And by the law of attraction, the more I lived on that habitual frequency, the more the universe is like, "Oh, you're thriving in this environment. So let me, you're the neuroplasticity in our brains is adapting to living in this negative vibrational frequency environment." And so the universe continued to give me that. And once I started to raise my temporary vibrational frequency as often as I possibly could by going out into nature, learning something new, reading a book about something that interested me, working out, things that release dopamine on these temporary spikes of frequency, when I would come back down to my habitual, it would still be higher than it was before, because now,
Right.
I'm doing things to raise my frequency. And the more that I do things to be in that high frequency, the more I will attract high frequency things. And so now I just started to, the more that I stay positive, the more that I make the right choice of staying sober and following my highest life path, opportunities are just presenting themselves left and right. It's really interesting. Perspective and frequency have been really, really important in my sobriety.
Now, did you find it hard? I know when I stopped doing like really what I they're all bad if done in excess, but I'm saying when I stopped like drinking and stuff and I started exercising more. Well, that was great, but then I became addicted to like exercising or I became, so it was something that was that was actually to an extent good for my body. but not, in excess. And the same with like working, since I wasn't partying and doing these other things, I became a workaholic. Did you find yourself like gradually, did you find it hard to balance things like that initially?
Definitely. It's probably been 6 months or so since I sort of changed my perspective on how my addiction worked for me.
Mhm.
I noticed that the reason I would continue to relapse is because my brain was searching for this constant flow of dopamine, of serotonin, of oxytocin, of all these chemicals that tells our body and our brains, "Hey, we're doing something right."
Mhm.
And I noticed that the reason why it was hard for me to stay sober was because sure, I would remove the substance from my life, but then I wasn't doing anything to add joy or happiness in sobriety. So to
Right.
my brain is telling me, "Why are we even sober? This isn't fun. We're getting none of the chemicals that make us feel good. We're constantly depressed. We're constantly angry or upset with ourselves or feeling unworthy or whatever it is, we're in this low vibration. Why are we sober? This makes no sense. We're getting all these feel good feelings if you would just go and get that substance. Go get that substance and we could feel amazing right now." And so my brain kept trying to tell me, kept trying to trick me, this is what we need. This is what we need to
Right.
be happy. And so having that perspective for me really changed a lot because I don't I don't look at those triggers as triggers. I look them at more as my brain is just has these residual neurological passages that are hanging on to whatever survival instinct that I had throughout my addiction. And so I've really changed my whole perspective on how addiction works in my brain.
I think, and I think that's important because especially, as children, when we have childhood trauma on top of that, the the cycle with kids is even negative attention and distractions and things like that become something their brain is. I know mine did, and like when kids act up and things like that, even from a very young age, um, it's like even though they're doing things harmful, um, and obviously what they're continuing to attract, yes, it's better than going, their bodies, it's not better, but their brains telling them it's better, their body's telling them it's better than going through sobriety and things like that.
Right.
Um, so let's go back to the beginning, the early days of Quinn, the the younger years, as far as what you're comfortable with. Where did you grow up? Where did you um I read a lot about um, some parts of your childhood that you shared with me, and whatever you'd like to share with the audience would be great.
How censored do I need to be?
I I mean we the only censoring as far as like YouTube and Facebook, they don't care too much about, like, we have some cursing and such, but as far as most of our shows aren't for children. So I guess that's if that answers your question. We do cuss occasionally and stuff. We just can't go crazy with it. Uh-oh.
Childhood had a lot to do with sexual abuse. That's where my feeling of unworthiness really started. It so I uh, well I moved here to the States with my mom and my brother when I was 4 years old. So my parents were divorced. My parents got divorced. We moved to the United States. We moved to a place. in Utah. I think it was Orem or something, and we didn't
That's a
speak a word of
rough
English.
first start in the United States is Utah. I just want just want to add.
Well, my mom had met some missionary when she was living in France. Apparently, they became close friends, and he was a great guy. They got married eventually, and but he wasn't able to have children, and so they didn't stay together. And my mom ended up meeting this uh, a manager of a Hard Rock Cafe in Salt Lake
Oh,
City,
wow.
Utah, and so she didn't know that he was an alcoholic and a cokehead, or maybe she did, I don't know, but he became very abusive after my sister was born. And but
How
before
old were
that,
you then?
at that time, I was between the ages of 8 and 15. But
Wow.
before that, when we moved to the States and my mom was with this missionary, we had lived in this place called Pleasant Grove after moving from Orem. Didn't know much English, and my all the neighborhood kids would play and hang out after school, and some of the older kids, two of the older kids, uh, a boy and a girl, they had to be maybe 4 or 5 years older than us. We were probably 5 to 7, and it just started being that game. Show me yours, I'll show you mine type of thing. And I mean, for 2 years, it was just constant, like touching. You know, I mean, everything from like blowjobs and penetration and everything. And basically, all the neighborhood kids were like molesting each other. And
Wow.
yeah, and at the age of between the ages of 5 and 7, when it was happening to me, not having a father figure, and then having a language barrier with my mom, with the kids, with being 5 to 7, not understanding how to express myself.
Right.
I specifically remember trying to say something about it, but my family, after talking about it with them, I mean, I held it in for 30 years. I finally talked to them about it. But anyway, they say
So
that
was
they
this
don't.
what year era was this in?
This was
We said 30 years.
1990.
So yes.
This was
Okay. So the early
1990.
90s, just to put
Yeah,
some perspective in. Yeah.
right. But so we were touching each other and stuff. I didn't really know what was going on. I was a young kid, didn't know how to properly express myself. I thought that I did tell some adults about it, and it got overlooked, and it just became something that I held within me. And I was just like, you know what, I'm just, nobody cares. And when we moved a lot, so every time that I moved, I had this opportunity to recreate myself in some way.
Yes.
And so I just kind of let that part of me go. I was like, you know what, I'm not even going to talk about it, nobody cared anyway, so I'm not even going to. But what I realized was that it wasn't even so much, after 30 years of holding all that in, and then having the pain and resorting to substance abuse, the unworthiness that I felt wasn't even from what happened to me. It was it was for me the idea that we were doing that to each other.
Right.
And there was probably 5 or 6 of us there. And so I was doing it back, and I was a part of causing this kind of psychological trauma on other people.
Right.
And that is what hurt me. That is what really, when I was a teenager, I just had this guilt that I had hurt these kids and that I, would be unforgiven. And then when I was 16 or 17, I had this relationship with a girl that she ended up saying that I took advantage of her, and to me was like heartbreaking because I would never want to do that or make somebody feel that way.
Right.
So after holding that in, and then in my teens for somebody to be like, "Hey, you also caused me this pain now," it was like everything stirred back up, and then the trauma just came in and just slammed me. I was like, "Man, you're just worthless, and this is who you are, and you're gonna be some kind of like rapist serial killer that's like some crazy, I don't know." Just my imagination started going wild, that I was going to be this terrible, terrible person. And so I just started to self medicate heavily and just,
Do you
I don't
think
know.
were you more angry or like depressed or both?
I'd say I was more depressed because something in my mind hadn't clicked at that point that there's nothing that I could do to change what had happened. And because I'm not able to make amends with them, that I can just continue to make correct that situation by making a living amend to be better, to dedicate myself to helping people, to make a deliberate a deliberate action saying this is how I'm going to make up for XYZ, you know. I hadn't figured that part out yet, and so I was very depressed and very, yeah, definitely very angry. I don't know if there's more one than the other, but unworthy, like worthless is how I felt. That I didn't deserve to walk this planet because of what you should be dead, and so that's how I felt about myself. Like you touched other kids, like
Right.
you shouldn't be alive, like that's how I felt about myself.
Did you now had you since that those things happened, had you talked to any of the other kids or well, you said you moved, right? So you
Right.
didn't keep in touch with any of them or
Correct.
have, so you wouldn't have known if any of them felt the same way or if, all of those things would have gone through my head like are they suffering like me? Did you think things like that? Or, um, I mean, some of them, it's profound that you saw the entire situation from that perspective, first of all. That's usually something that most people can't do until they're much more mature, not way past teenage years. Um, because it's just human nature to initially resort to like a victim mentality, from a young age as far as in a scenario like that. Um, as far as thinking like, well, we all did it to each other, and the parents should have done something, or what I mean, like. So
Right.
it's interesting that you blamed yourself more so than automatically resorting
Well,
to.
well, uh, to be honest, as a child, I didn't know what love was exactly. I had this idea, or at least my brain that was getting all this oxytocin from people loving me thought it had. I thought I had an idea of what love was at a very young age because I loved my best friend. I thought that I was gay at a very young age because I loved my best friend. Like I wanted to kiss him for some reason because I didn't understand
Right.
what this feeling was. Um, and I think that was eh, that that was the way that I was conditioned, is that I didn't quite understand what love was. And so as a child, thinking back, like I don't really even I remember I remember giving each other blowjobs and things. I remember, there was a girl involved and we were doing things with her. Um, but as far as me personally being really hurt about what happened to me, I was penetrated, and about how I felt really didn't didn't really bother me. It's like, what, I made those decisions. I screwed up. I was young and mistakes happen. That I could forgive myself for. You know,
Right.
I may have tried something, I didn't like it. I thought I was gay, then maybe I'm not, whatever. But to think that I did that to somebody else that may not have had a choice, that maybe they didn't have the same type of thinking that I did, or maybe
Right.
whatever, maybe their perspective on what was happening was far different. That is what really I couldn't get I couldn't get past. That's what I was really stuck on, is and then I didn't know how to reach out to those people or how to make amends with those people, or I didn't even have the courage to even say anything. I'm like, "Oh, well, what if they don't even remember and here I am, I'm gonna stir something up," you know? So, a lot of that was fear, and so it wasn't I don't know, I don't really look at it as the pain that I was caused. I just look at it as the decisions that I made, and but I can't speak for those other people. I don't know how they saw it.
Right. Have you ever considered writing? We were talking about journals and such, and you said you never wrote any. I mean nowadays, though, people can use like ghostwriters and stuff of transcripts. But have you ever considered that, like writing to the like a memoir? Of obviously changing names and stuff, but like to these people, how they say psychologically, like that's how you make amends with somebody you can't, who's either no longer in this world or not in your life for whatever reason. That would I
Right.
think would
Yeah,
be
living amends.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I have thought about that. I so I just got sober October 1st of 2020. So I just hit 2 years,
2 years.
and
Amazing.
yes,
Congratulations, by the way.
thank
That's
you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I just got sober, it feels like, for me. It's been 2 years, but so I started using at age 15, and the entire time, not the entire time, I had a year of sobriety once, I had 9 months once, I had a month here and there, 2 months here and there, but for the most part, for the majority of the past 18 years, I was in active addiction, and I didn't really ever accomplish anything. I dropped out of college. I mean, I finished high school. I actually graduated early from high school, but after that, I couldn't hold a job for more than a few months. I was often selling drugs or robbing or doing home invasions, schemes, scams, something. I didn't really have any formal education, and so when I got sober, I decided, you know what, I basically am starting over from when I was 15. I mean,
right.
this whole life that I have built around addiction, I get to throw that whole life out. I'm changing my location, I'm changing my friends, I'm changing literally everything that I know about this old persona that I've created, this addict Quinn. I'm getting rid of that life, and I literally like cried about it and everything, like as if I like watched it die.
Mhm.
And I started to paint this new canvas of who I wanted to be, and I started saying, okay, I get to recreate who I am. And so what I'm getting at is like I don't know a whole lot. I'm just starting out, with all this social media stuff, with all the Facebook following and everything. I mean, the Facebook following grew 150,000 in 3 months. I mean, it just came out of nowhere, and I'm getting all these opportunities, but like I have no idea what I'm doing. Somebody told me, hey, when I started posting videos, journaling my life, they told me, dude, you should be a motivational speaker. And in my canvas, I was like, boom, I'm a motivational speaker. I don't even know what that means, what it's going to take, what that entails, but that is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to just jump right in and I'm going to dedicate myself and I will learn along the way. And as long as I tell people, hey, you know what? I have no idea what I'm doing. This is just what I'm trying to do. Then maybe they'll be a little compassionate and they'll go easy on me.
So I want to tell you something. See, that's your perspective of yourself. Because when I first came across your a lot of your videos, I'm like, wow, I want to know this guy. This guy really knows what he's talking about. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. He's
Oh yeah, I've got a
he's got
PhD in drug and substance abuse.
no,
I,
no. I
I
mean,
went I
as
went for
far
18 years, and I can tell you anything you want to know about substance abuse
but I'm
or
saying
any kind of criminal activity.
as far as your speaking ability, your ability to a lot of people can say that they've had whatever experience, but that doesn't necessarily make them easy to relate to. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. Um and I think all of all of the videos I've seen of yours, and the method you use, and just being real, um is something that I could relate to, and I'm like, wow, this is an amazing guy. This is someone that
Thank
um
you.
you, like I
I'm
said,
glad
you might think that
it's
you don't have everything figured out, and that's fine, and know what you're doing on social media or whatever, but that doesn't matter. You took the first step in sharing your story, and that motivates other people. That motivates people like me. That motivates my listeners. That's something that even kids that's happening to today. And I can tell you because I have kids myself. I have nieces and nephews,
yeah.
and the stuff that they are doing, that I hear about through, even through hiring,
It's crazy.
in different fields, high schoolers and things like that. I'm like, you did what? Like you did
Right.
what at a
Yeah.
party? We weren't doing that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they do some. They're crazy. I
It's
mean,
scary.
we for us when we were that age, we were doing drugs and stuff, and we weren't really having sex yet. 16 years old, 15, 16 years old. It was still like, a couple of our friends were doing it, but not everybody. Now apparently all the young kids are having sex at like
Oh,
12, 13 years old.
yeah.
I'm
I
like,
was gonna
what are
say
you
there's
like,
like full
what?
blown orgies in middle school. You know what I mean? I'm like,
What the
what?
heck?
I can't
The
even.
internet is so wild.
Oh, yes. So that's what I mean by
That's just
you
crazy.
taking the first step to tell your story, and it gives other people courage to do the same. You know what I mean? Because telling your story is so freeing, first of all, and then you can worry about anything else as far as the
Absolutely.
logistics of social media and everything else. But getting that off your chest, especially the first time, like where did
Yeah.
you so you started telling your story on your own, um, just your own platform initially, correct?
I started on TikTok, and on
Okay.
TikTok I started actually about a year ago. And I started with 0 followers and built it to